The local market also rose today, but compared to those European markets, the gains of the JSE were much more tempered. That's because the gold miners weighed. They're battling a lower gold price and also concerns about wage negotiations in the gold sector. Talks kicking off again today. They're expected to be tough. Well, to discuss, we're now joined by SABC reporter Mbongeni Muthwa. Great to have you with us, Mbongeni.
Thank you.
So, those talks behind closed doors today, any idea of how day one has gone?
Well, day one basically got off to a slow start. The principals from both the Chamber of Mines, representing the employers, and the unions, that's NUM, AMCU, UASA, Solidarity, spent the better part of the day basically sorting out the house rules, as it were, discussing who should be the chair of the talks. It was agreed that Mo Ali, who is a senior commissioner at the CCMA, should be the chair of the talks. Of course, he's not representing the CCMA there. He's doing it in his personal capacity, but he commands enough respect from all parties that he can chair these talks, which are likely to be very bruising and difficult.
Is it fair enough to say that fear is very high ahead of these talks and as they got underway today? The industry has been saying that it's already suffering, maybe even more vulnerable than the platinum miners that were hit last year, but very far apart. The union's still asking for increases of 80%, even more.
Yes, there is fear in different coaches. There is fear among the employers, like you've explained, and also, as you've alluded to, there is fear among investors as well that at the end of these talks there could be a strike. And the feeling is that a strike in the gold sector will be very crippling. It could see some mines or mining companies actually collapse. Already you would have seen that since the last round of negotiations 3 years ago, there's been quite a number of shaft closures at Harmony and so on. So the industry is in a very vulnerable state at the moment, and a strike would definitely be crippling.
In light of that, are the unions, first let's look at the main union, the National Union of Mine Workers. Does it feel justified in asking for 80%?
It feels justified. I remember we attended their bargaining conference where their demands were formulated. And one of the things that they cited, of course, was the increase in the cost of living, the increases in things like electricity, food prices, and so on. But also they cited executive pay. That workers are always asked to sacrifice in tough economic times, but the executives of these mining companies don't follow that example. Their bonuses and so on keep rising in the millions. So they feel justified. Of course, there is also the rivalry between NUM and AMCU. AMCU, of course.
Can we talk about that? Because AMCU is asking for even more, using the 12,500 rand. So that represents well over 80%. And there's always this fear that the unions are now pushing for huge settlements because they're competing with each other. The NUM, the majority union, but AMCU is saying that it's got a membership way in excess from what's been estimated, that the NUM no longer has that 51% threshold. Just explain to us, what benefits do you have being the main union?
If you are the majority union in the gold and coal mining sectors, it means that if you agree to sign an agreement with the employers, it means then the minority unions can't go on strike if they're not happy with what we've agreed on.
Everyone has to comply.
If you are not happy and you decide to go on strike, even if the minority unions agree with the offer, they can't stop you from going. So basically, that's what it's about. Of course, at the level of union rivalry, AMCU being a breakaway union from NUM, and they're rising and toppling the NUM in the platinum sector. Now, they've been working and pushing very hard to finish off the NUM by toppling them as the majority in the gold and coal as well.
And I guess even the rhetoric, what we can get you as a union, much higher than them, that counts as well. But very quickly, the gold sector is different to the platinum sector in that there is collective bargaining. The gold miners are represented by the Chamber of Mines. But this time, one gold mine signed an early settlement. Just explain that diversion from previous practice.
Well, that thing that happened took everyone by surprise because no one knew that Gold Fields was actually negotiating with the NUM and UWASA, who the NUM, of course, represents about 80-something% of the workforce at Gold Fields. They've got this mechanized gold mine called South Deep, somewhere in the south of Joburg. It's the only mechanized mine in South Africa. So they went to the Chamber of Mines and said, you know what, we want to actually pull out of the collective bargaining process this time around. We want to make sure we can't afford to have any disruptions or strike or anything. We want to negotiate separately. And the Chamber gave them the green light. They started negotiating back in January. No one knew that there were actually these talks going on until they came and announced a settlement or an agreement early April. So basically, that's what happened. The interesting thing about it is they agreed to give the workers there an increase of 12,000 rands up to 15,500 rands over 3 years. At the time, we did ask them that if that settlement will actually set a precedent for these talks that have just begun today, and they were both NUM and Goldfields were cagey about that, but I can assure you that that settlement is going to feature or be used by the unions in these talks to demand a similar hefty increase from the other mining gold companies.
I agree with you. They could say these mines are much more technical, the hikes should be higher, but surely that will be used. And thank you so much for your analysis. Mbongeni Muthwa will continue to follow those wage negotiations expected to be very tough. Well, the gold miners fell by more than 4% as a group today as those kicked off. That prevented better gains on the JSE. It still ended about 0.75% higher. Equity markets generally very bullish ahead of tonight's talks around Greece. So that was the global picture. Also positive for the rand. It pushed it closer to 12 rand to the dollar. Let's take a look at your main financial indicators. Well, it would seem that the days of the mighty dollar may be numbered. Instead,